2024年の大統領選挙が近づく中、The Iron Age Archive として知られる政治コンテンツ制作チームが突然姿を消した。以下はMAGAの復活中に彼らが行った場所についての信憑性の低い記述です。
My name isn't important. At the end of the day, I'm really just acting as a kind of rogue documentarian. Or maybe a fixer. Or at the very least a friend. And if nothing else, somebody who still knows where all the old files are buried.
We need to learn to listen before we can really start talking.
And that's why we started a podcast.
Yeah.
Well, so that we could listen to Conan.
Well, yeah. so we could listen to Homer. So I could listen to Homer, you could listen to me, and then everybody else can listen to us.
This is it. I love it.
Mine isn't a voice that you'd recognize from any of the old Iron Age archive shows either. Was never on camera, never in the credits. But I was always there, especially when McNukes went down for the count, bedridden by his illness and burned out on politics. In fact, after they had completed their series on tragedy and hope, both he and Bucklander had completely lost faith in any form of meaningful political solution. They'd continue to watch the circus, but see only the specters of the old ghosts that had haunted the West from time immemorial. Bucklander would even joke sometimes that the majority of right-wing thought had now devolved into nothing more than reheated Evola. And so life went on that year, while politics shifted out of focus. McNukes got his health back, and then set a course towards getting into the best shape of his life. Bucklander, meanwhile, started work on a series of children's novels, based on the summers that he had spent as a boy in Devon. And of course, there was also Laurentian. Well, Laurentian was still hopping around from book club to book club, amassing an encyclopedia of esoteric knowledge for supposed future purposes. Nonetheless, work at the archive had come to a halt. The boys made one final video that winter about a classic Studio Ghibli anime, and then vanished. The private group chat soon digressed into endless chatter about steak, homebrew health recipes, and Canadian NHL hockey. Although, to be fair, I also had my own part to play in that. But then came that fateful moment in October 2024, the turning point. When Trump sat across from Rogan, 59 million views. And just like that, the entire landscape shifted once again.
And they're stiffs in many cases.
Stiffs.
They're survivors. I find that,
What do you mean by stiffs? When you say stiffs?
a stiff, they don't have nothing. They have nothing. Or they're smart and survive. One little thing. So there was a congressman years before I ran, and I was very close to him. And I needed a license on something, and he was very important in getting the license. But it was a little bit controversial, the license, this particular thing that was being licensed. But I was close to this guy. Anyway, he tapped me along for a long period of time and ultimately didn't do it. And I said, you are a stiff. You could have done this thing so easy, etc. But it was controversial.
And so they never do anything controversial. They never take any chances or speak their opinion. It's outside of the... Yeah.
And yet I don't disrespect him for it.
So
I actually respected the guy more in a certain way. I said,
because he did survive.
You know what? He's been there for 28 years, and he made it through. A lot of people don't make it through.
It's a good way for non-exceptional people to survive.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly is.
That interview changed everything. For McNukes, it was as if years of cynicism, which had been building up since Trump's first term in office, were swiftly peeled away in the span of 3 hours.
The Trump episode offers some good insights on pragmatic leadership and what it looks like to work inside the machine.
He proclaimed with excitement
Trump is also very much a prime example of an anti-managerial. Rogan asked him how he was going to stop the war in Ukraine and potentially Taiwan. And Trump answered by saying that he had a very good relationship with Putin and Xi, and that they would never try this stuff on his watch. He gets the relational aspect and how to deal with people, rather than simply applying policy and procedure like a stiff.
Bucklander, however, wasn't so easily convinced.
I hate how willing Americans are to worship Trump. He could so easily be a false prophet for the technocracy, given he's working with Elon and Thiel, basically the front man for the next phase of the Masonic American project.
It would be the start of a debate that would run through every subsequent call, memo, and group chat. We circled back to it again and again. While I didn't pick a side, I also had my doubts about Trump as well, but McNuke seemed unshakable. Eventually, I pressed him on it. Was he sure that Trump was truly representing an anti-globalist agenda? Wasn't it possible that this was just another layer of controlled opposition?
Maybe. Trump won't be able to make America great again, but at the very least, he can still set a new trend of making executives sovereign again. Leaders like Trump and Putin are the last true statesmen. Technocrats don't know what to do with them because they don't follow the script and are not slaves to the program. And I think that the more sovereign executives that there are in the world, the more it becomes possible to break the system that forms the unipolar one world order. So I don't know if he is controlled or not, but I do know that he is a threat to our enemies and to their system, just by representing a new way of doing things. Man-to-man politics. Which really is actually an old way of doing things.
That's where the rabbit trails began. At first, it seemed as though it was just about Trump. Could he deliver on his promises? He pissed off all the right people, which meant that he must have been doing something right. But then it was quickly becoming something bigger. A question about a turning point in history and the fate of the global empire itself. And then, just a few weeks later, a mystery man named Jason Miranchuk appeared on an interview with Academic Agent.
I do think there is a global empire, or a Western empire, but I don't think it's run out of America. But I think over the course of the next, let's say, 25 years or so, a real deal American empire is going to emerge. And so the real American empire hasn't even begun yet.
What did he say?
And just like that, a new theory came crashing into the old assumptions. Miranchuk's appearance that night more than rattled a few cages, as he called into question many of our preconceived notions about America's role in forming the one world order. Perhaps one of our biggest blind spots, especially in those early days of investigating the global empire and the, quote, elites, was the belief that there ultimately was just a single, unified group behind it all, running the show according to their script. The classic conspiracy theory comfort blanket. One shadowy cabal, one all-seeing eye, all the chaos of history mapped to a small handful of hands. Miranchuk, though, began his appearance on AA with much more nuance, by highlighting the recent workings of the Carlyle Group, a powerful private equity firm with deep ties to both Washington insiders and global finance.
And the Carlyle Group was the aha moment for me. And I think as we go through all those data points, you'll start to see that this is sort of the connective tissue that is holding these people behind Trump. So the Carlyle Group is formed in 1987 at the tail end of the Reagan administration. They basically take over Star Wars, or SDI. They come in at the end of the Cold War. All these small military companies were going out of business because the Cold War was over. So they come in and they sweep a whole bunch of these up. They become de facto, in many ways, the military-industrial complex. Then you get the Clintons coming in. Clinton defunds the SDI program and changes it over. And then you get George Bush Jr. coming in, and his entire first year is spent, right before 9/11 happens, is spent talking about ballistic missiles. In fact, he tears up the missile defense treaty they had signed with Russia at the end of the Cold War, which surprised the Russians. And the idea is to start building tons and tons of missiles and doing an Iron Dome in America. Sound familiar to what Trump's doing? So then, of course, 9/11 happens and kind of derails a lot of these ideas.
Miranchuk then pointed out that this powerful group of private equity investors had been signaling their support behind Trump in the months leading up to the election. But why? Was it that the cabal of elites who ruled the world were now turning away from long overstayed woke agendas and self-destructive green policies that were hurting their bottom line, and now trying to pivot to an agenda that would restore their profits and put America back to work again? Or was it that there actually were some truly powerful people in the world of finance, tech, and industry that really did, in fact, have financial and personal interests in not seeing the United States be bankrupted and hollowed out by global trade deficits, open borders, DEI policies, and something like the Fourth Industrial Revolution? Planned and coordinated globalist pivot to put the woke away, or an actual divergence in interests between competing power factions. Miranchuk's Tales of the Shadow Empire series, done in collaboration with financial industry insider Stormy Waters, was the next fork in the trail. And in that, many more details were hashed out.
But every now and again, you will see a chairman who is also a CEO. That is a person to pay attention to. That person is a mogul, a tycoon. Jamie Dimon, for instance, is one of these people. Elon Musk is one of these people. They are both chairman and CEO. They are self-made. They own the most shares in their company than anyone else. And they also run the day-to-day. That person cares about his business. And if that person's business is in America and is tied to America, like JP Morgan Chase is, right? Or, really any of the 3 or 4 companies that Elon Musk has, right? They care about America de facto. And everybody also has this assumption that bankers are evil, financiers are evil, right? Goldman Sachs is evil. JP Morgan Chase is evil.
Yeah. Makunux.
Well, for the clowns that think that,
あなたのチャンネルを削除する.
I strongly urge you to go and listen. Type in Jamie Dimon Davos.
Turns out it wasn't only the Carlyle Group. Private equity investors, Silicon Valley tech moguls, oil tycoons, American military contractors, and even established institutional CEOs like Jamie Dimon. In reality, there was really no shortage of rich and powerful people in America who would not only benefit from an effective Trump presidency that could bring production and prosperity back to America, but for many of them, their livelihoods actually depended on it.
because everybody knows it. Oh, well, this is this faction fighting and this is other faction fighting. What are they fighting over? One side likes Trump and the other side doesn't like Trump. Like, are you stupid? You think either of these sides really care about Trump? Like, what is the actual thing that has pitched these two groups against each other in a life or death struggle? And I'll tell you what, it's not the love or hate of Trump. Sorry. It's this. The Western world, because of this fake monetary system called the Eurodollar system, which has ballooned tenfold, it was tenfold before COVID, right? But basically, it was supposed to be a suicide pact, right? That's what the Great Reset was. Everybody forgets that, less than 3 years ago, every fucking world leader, the entire regime was saying, build back better, Great Reset stuff. So let's not forget that. What that was a marketing scheme for a sovereign debt suicide pact. All of these nations were going to default on their debt simultaneously, right? That was the plan. And they were going to roll out a central bank digital currency. And what a central bank digital currency does is takes all capital formation and puts it in the hand of the government. Well, if you're a commercial bank, if you're a bank, you're out of fucking business, right? And the banks in Europe are already insolvent, right? They're already out of business, right? They got a head start. All of the people that own these banks had taken all their money years before COVID, years before you even heard about solar panels and dumb shit like that, and put all their money into all these green investments.
Boy, who's back there? Run!
Right, and then had the European governments step in behind them and subsidize them with billions and billions and billions of dollars in grants, right? So they're already 5 to 10x times their money before the party even got started. And everything was going along very swimmingly until Jamie Dimon and David Solomon found out. David Solomon is a Jewish Jamie Dimon. He is the chairman and CEO of Goldman Sachs, right? That institution, Goldman Sachs, and this man's identity are inseparable, right? Like, yes, these guys are both billionaires, but if you're a billionaire, then money doesn't matter to you anymore, right? So other things matter more than money. What matters to them is their life's work, right? So David Solomon and Jamie Dimon don't like the idea of going out of business, and they're going to fight that. And they're fighting it through the financial system.
Jamie Dimon would have lost his life's work if commercial banking were to be replaced by stakeholder capitalism and central bank digital currencies. American military contractors would no longer be in operation if, per the Great Reset, America was no longer a world superpower by 2030. And private equity investors would stand to lose billions in long-term investments if American industry were to continue to be hampered by the green agenda in a non-competitive business environment. Jason and Stormy's analysis was thoroughly undermining the old common narrative of a singular shadowy cabal moving all of the pieces on the grand chessboard according to a step-by-step playbook. However, not everyone would want to hear it. Hey, the idea that America could now be a force in the fight against globalism and the one world technocratic governance model was simply a bridge that not many were willing to cross. What is this? By the time that we had gone through the Tales of the Shadow Empire series, the conversation was starting to heat up.
So we've got a super chat here from Laurentian, and he says, "It isn't like your Saturday morning cartoon, heroes versus villains. Statecraft is about real competition for power, between real people with real objectives, financial and otherwise."
Okay, sure. I'll grant that there are individuals that have competing interests. But I don't think that we can then ignore the collective goals and group interests that are at play here. What about Zionism? What about transhumanism? or all of the mass immigration stuff? The elites clearly don't just act as individuals who only have individual goals.
I don't think that we're ignoring those other goals or group interests, but instead we're just also finding that there's been a collective goal that everyone has forgotten about. Maintaining the shadowy offshore dollar banking system that has cost America its sovereignty. This Eurodollar system is what has enabled all of the leeches, both Jew and Greek, to profit off of unregulated, externally controlled American dollars. America has been fighting for its independence for nearly 300 years and has never been able to truly secure it.
The backdrop for all of this is this system that was established with the Marshall Plan is that the way that Europe has been able to pretend to be a first world country is because they are constantly subsidized by freely available American dollars. They can take those American dollars and they can rehypothecate them as many times as they want and pretend that they have a stack of assets that that don't belong to them. And when you're dealing with human minds and human lifespans, once you get through a generation or two, then it just becomes, this is just how things are. The US runs perpetual trade deficits and is a net importer of everybody else's production, so they're net consumers, and they consume on debt because of these trade deficits. The United States necessarily has to maintain this level of debt to maintain those trade deficits so they can finance the deficit, so they can ensure the maintenance of their currency.
The evidence continued to mount. Stormy Waters, Tom Luongo, Matt Arrett, and many more researchers, all pointing to American billionaires, bankers, tech moguls, retired military generals, and energy interests, going up directly against the City of London's efforts to remake the global financial system into a central bank digital dictatorship. Not a conspiracy, but a turf war, to determine who would ultimately control the vast riches and resources of the most prosperous nation in human history.
If you really want to make the argument about sovereignty and who doesn't have sovereign control over their own monetary policy, it's been the United States since Bretton Woods. And it was a system that was put in place by the British for the exact purpose of subverting U.S. sovereignty through monetary policy.
There may have been some overlap, but it was never entirely true that America and Europe had the same ruling elite. There were those who were trying to extract wealth and resources out of America, and those who were trying to bring that wealth back into the country and help it take back its sovereignty and monetary policy. The City of London was really just the epicenter for a larger network that was profiting immensely off of these extraction schemes. Schemes that were bolstered by the Marshall Plan, but are now under threat to be ended by the Mar-a-Lago Accord.
Arigato! Bloody hell. Watch where you're going. Get out of my way.
So we started to map it out. Rival factions, overlapping interests, double crosses that made more sense than any grand conspiracy. American patriots, if you will, clawing back sovereignty away from foreign interests. The Eurodollar mafia, trying to keep America and its financial system on a leash. We had formerly been led to believe that national borders had become irrelevant, as the world had fallen under the control of a global ruling elite. But once the money stopped flowing, geography still mattered. And even so-called globalists would start to bleed for their own turf.
せん。